welcome back to Friday 15. Our topic today is wireless door locks. We're going to be investigating and exploring the world of wireless door locks. Our guest today is Ashley DeFazio, a former colleague at DES. I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to have this discussion with you.
Good. All right, so let's start off. ASSA ABLOY, tell us a little bit about it.
So ASSA ABLOY is a global leader in door hardware. So basically that covers doors, frames, mechanical hardware, as well as the electronic hardware we're going to be talking through today.
Okay, so let's start off with a very basic question. Wired seems so complicated. You got to get a wire. You got to tell us why anybody would opt to go wired for the electronic access control.
So wired access control has been around for a long time. When it comes to putting access control on any door, you have the ability to add all those parts, right? A card reader, an electronic strike, a mag lock, whatever that locking mechanism may be. Somebody is trying to monitor that opening, who's coming, who's going, and be able to get an audit trail using their access control software.
Okay, and then the difference though between wired and wireless. What are the downsides to going wireless and what are the upsides to wired? Why would one choose one over the other?
So, I would say when it comes to using wired, there are applications for it. The downside, I would say, to wireless, there could be specific instances of that, right? So somebody could say, well, what if there's a power outage, or what if there's a loss of Wi-Fi network? Well, these locks are intelligent locks. So whether you're using our Apereo real-time wireless solution or our Wi-Fi solution, there are ways to get around that and still be able to get that audit trail. These locks are capable of holding an audit. Say the Wi-Fi goes out and they are not communicating to their access control system. They would hold an audit basically of the last, let's say, 1,000 people that have gone through that door, and those people would still have access. So that's most of the questions that we get are, what about if this happens? What about if this happens? And so we do have some solutions to kind of get around those instances. Now, the difference between wireless and wired, when you talk about a wired solution, you're actually wiring each device at that door. You're wiring to the card reader, you're wiring to the electronic strike, the request to exit, the door contact or door position switch to monitor whether the door is open or closed. So you're running that thick composite cable to the door all the way back to the access control panel. Now, when you're talking about wireless solutions, these are actually taking all of those devices and putting them into basically a solution that is on the door. You're not running any wires to the door and those devices themselves. We'll get into a little bit more detail on the one wire you might need when it comes to the Apereo solution.
Okay, so you need one wire, possibly, okay, but generally it's much simpler because you've got all the fixtures, all the actual hardware on the door itself. You don't have to bring in wires. If you are if you move around doors, you're not changing a whole infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about I'm thinking about if you have a big campus, how many doors is in a typical big campus?
Let's say we're doing, let's talk about an academic building. There may be up to 200 doors in an academic building, depending on the size of the university or the college, for example. So when you're talking about retrofit, so yes, we are eliminating those wires. We're eliminating the cost of those extra wire runs. So retrofit from that example, the customer is actually able to do more doors with the wireless solution because the cost is less. Now, each of these solutions can come in whether the customer already has an existing cylindrical lock or an existing mortise style lock. We're able to match that prep on the door. There may be a couple of holes that need to be added as far as adding the reader on the physical door, but the pocket in which the lock sits in the door or where the cylindrical lock sits, that's already existing. So retrofitting these solutions is pretty simple. Also, there is not a lot of infrastructure that needs to go into this because, again, we're not running those wires back to the access control panel. So we can save a cost for the customer there as well. So usually when it comes to retrofit, we're talking about maybe for our Apereo solution, a hub in the ceiling, depending on the access control software. That would be the only infrastructure cost along with the licensing from that specific software manufacturer.
Cool. Okay, so you mentioned a Perio, you mentioned some other types of wireless locks. So let's walk through those choices that you have.
Sure.
Tell me broad categories, what choices are there?
So let's talk about our Aperio real-time wireless solution first. So again, this is basically the lock and the card reader on the door. Everything is on the door. But when you talk about that real-time connection, these locks are set up to communicate to a hub in the ceiling. Now that hub can communicate back to the access control system either via a 485 connection or an IP connection. And again, all of that is solely based on the integrations made with the software company. So some can do both or some can do one. And that also has an impact on how many locks to a hub we're able to do depending on that software. So when we say real-time wireless, I just want to make sure that we know that you are communicating 24/7 from that hub to that lock. So a lot of people are interested in that, remote lockdown situation. You're able to do that even though the card reader and the lock are not wired directly to an access control panel.
Okay, so that means the hub is controlling the lock itself.
Correct.
The person holding the card, there's a permission given when they.
So it works the same as like a regular access control panel. When you walk up to a door and you present your credential to the reader, it communicates to the access control software and says this person is either access granted or access denied. So that communication is still happening, but it's happening from the lock to the hub and then back to the access control system. So same thing, it's saying, hey, you're allowed into this door, or hey, sorry, you're not allowed into this door.
Okay, so let's compare that now to the other system.
Sure.
Okay.
So our Wi-Fi solution. So basically this sits on the existing Wi-Fi network. Now I know a lot of IT folks are probably thinking, well, is this going to bog down my network? No, it doesn't, because these locks are not online 24/7. So they would communicate back to the access control system via the Wi-Fi, every, let's say 2 times a day. Only basically what they're doing is communicating any changes that were made from the access control system. So if a user was added or a user was taken out, that will communicate via those 2 times a day. They are not able to do the remote lockdown. There are other ways that you can wake the lock up. So for instance, in a university setting, we see a lot of Wi-Fi locks in a dorm setting because you don't need that constant communication, right? We're having a hardwired card reader on the front door, which is known as an updater to us. So basically that student would hit the updater, their credential would get any updates, the system would make any changes, and then they would be able to go to their door and turn on that lock essentially when they present their badge. The other ways to wake up that lock would include if a student goes up to the door, say they're a new student, they just got their credential. They would go up to the door, present their card. It would say access denied. They would wait, let's say 30 seconds, and they would try it again. So when that access denied happens with the software, it's waking up that lock and downloading any new information from the access control system.
So is a choice really a matter of cost, or are there certain applications where one would be better than the other?
There is a cost difference because it's not communicating all the time, but really we try to take it from a solution basis. So, what is the customer looking for? Do they want that real time 24/7 communication able for remote lockdown? Do they not need that? Like I said, in the dorm scenario. So it's really up to what the customer is trying to do and how they're trying to use it with their in conjunction with their access control system.
Right. So if you do have, say, an office setting and you have a stable workforce, you don't need that real-time credentialing happening.
I would say no. For that example, in a small office building, if you already are putting access control on your front door and you just want to be able to lock down a specific person's office, or if they have, they want to use their badge to get into an office, yes, a Wi-Fi lock might be good for that instance because they already have that security at the front line of their entrance.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up over here. This is a little chart I got from the ASSA ABLOY website. And if you could just talk through it briefly, just so we understand what, it's a summary of what you just said, but having a visual to it.
Sure. So when we're talking about, we could go here line by line, but each basically talks about the different intricacies when it comes to the IT infrastructure. We talked a little bit about that enables remote lockdown. So you'll see, for example, the Apereo solution can do that, whereas the Wi-Fi cannot, as we discussed. Some of the other things is that so for instance, the makes access decisions locally in the lock. So we see that on the Wi-Fi because it needs to have that communication, wake up, be able to make those decisions locally at the door, whether it's we'll say offline or online or awake or sleeping kind of thing. When you talk about leveraging your security system infrastructure, I think we kind of touched on that a bit, but you're already having this access control platform in place, so you're able to communicate with that. That's why the Apereo is listed there. So
Right.
those are just a few of those examples based on this chart here.
Great. Okay, so as you mentioned, your biggest security system. So www, wide world of wireless. Your wireless, you have it, but ultimately you could probably connect it to anything.
Yes. So there's a couple of different things when we talk about that wireless integration, right? So I think I've beat this in that it depends also on the access control software platform and what those integration looks like. So one thing to mention also about our Apereo family is that through those integrations, we do have the ability to expand into a couple of other things. We do have some wireless cabinet locks that fall under that solution and communicate the same via a hub. So we've seen that in some instances in, say, universities when it comes to a science lab. They want to lock down their chemicals. So they're going to put this wireless cabinet lock on that cabinet, just seeing that they already have the Apereo infrastructure in place and there's a solid integration with their access control platform.
Right. And talk about cabinets. So you have a freestanding cabinet. That's a great application for wireless. You get your audit trail. So if something goes missing, you can see exactly who was the last person in. So you can figure out what
exactly
happened.
Yep. And we see that a lot too from an IT cabinet. So, a server rack where, the IT department wants to make sure that only the people that are supposed to be in that server cabinet are going in and out. So that's a great application to have an audit trail within a data center down to the exact cabinet.
Right. There's also other applications, just knowing what's being touched and where and how. So just in terms of your supplies, of how your floor is functioning, who's using what, just the whole usage of your building, really.
Yes, for sure. I mean, everybody wants to know and have that audit trail and that history for certain instances. It's better to be proactive and have those audits than to be just simply reactive. And one of the other things when we talk about integrations is we see a lot of access control platforms that work with our locks that also integrate with different camera softwares, and you're able to point a camera at a certain door and ensure that it's that person using their credential at the door. So you can kind of have that dual authentication that, this person entered this room at this time and this is when they exited.
Cool. Okay, so I want to conclude with some recommendations and resources.
Sure.
So tell us where we should go, where to go, where to learn more.
So one of the greatest websites that ASSA ABLOY has is called the Intelligent Openings website, which you'll see Dina put the QR code here. We are happy to provide, there's plenty of resources on there that are open to the public. You don't have to have a username to log in. There's no specific information there. And also you're able to use my end user specialist team along with the other people at DSS Tri-State and work directly with DES to get any information on either of these solutions, depending on the software that you're using as an end user.
Love it. Thank you, Ashley. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.
Yep. Thank you so much, Dina. I appreciate it.